Okay, welcome back to the Nick and Joe Show. I'm Joe, he's Nick. I'm sitting in the Think Radio Broadcast Center in Canada's National Capital. Nick is sitting in the studio at Killaloe, Ontario. Are you there, Nick? Come on in.
Oh, I certainly hope so.
Right, Broadcast Center to Nick Vandergraat.
I'm here.
That was a terrible joke. Why did I just do that? I don't get it.
You were doing Major Tom.
Is that what it was?
Ground Control to Major Tom.
Oh, that's a song.
Yes, Pink Floyd.
Is it Pink Floyd?
I think so.
Okay. Anyway, let's go. We spent the first segment of tonight's show talking about the residential schools here in Canada and the discovery of the remains of 215 children. So let's stay on the topic of schools, but now we're going to talk a little bit about public schools here in Ontario and the fact that the provincial government, notwithstanding its intent to gradually reopen business and the economy, etc., in the province of Ontario, have opted now to keep Ontario public schools closed for the duration of the rest of the school year and the entire summer. So kids in public school, in government schools here in the province of Ontario, in Canada, the schools have been closed now for some time, and they are going to remain closed until September, the first week of September at the earliest. And this has caused quite a bit of consternation amongst some parents, some families, and some doctors. It's funny, people these days just can't help themselves. They have to express themselves in a manner that they think is being clever. So I just saw this afternoon the statement issued by, I don't know if it was one pediatrician or a pediatric association of some sort, and the heading is province or Premier Ford chooses patios over what was it now?
Playgrounds?
Pediatrics or something like that. I can't remember. See, I was going to make a point and I didn't have it written down. I was going by memory and I forgot it. But anyway, the point was that they were doing a turn of the phrase and stuff like that, and I go, okay, really? Just get to the point. But there are a lot of pediatricians, mental health experts, parental groups, etc., who have been upset for quite some time about the closed government schools here in Ontario, and of course, even private schools with the stay-at-home order that was just lifted, in fact, today, and all of the other restrictions that have been put on gatherings, and that even private schools have been forced to close. But now they can start to slowly reopen, but government schools are not going to reopen until September. So I'm not sure that I entirely disagree with it. Now, full disclosure, had 4 kids. They went to private school, except for a couple of years here and there in their school education. They went to religious school, and they're all grown up, and almost all of them have their own children and their own families. So I don't have a dog in this hunt one way or the other. So it's easy for me to say. So that's my full disclosure. But my position on this is that unless you were contemplating keeping these schools open over the summer months, that would be over July and or August, unless that is what was on the table, I don't see the point of sending them back to school for another 2 weeks.
Well, you and I are going to take a little bit different tack on this, Joseph. I think that even though it's just a couple of weeks, I agree. On one hand, you're right. It's not going to make really a hill of beans difference if you shut them down 2 weeks from now until September, like is the normal case, or you keep them closed. I think that from my perspective, children are, of all, humanity by its nature is a social construct. It's, men are social creatures. The people need to get together in groups to socialize, to, if you want to get really primitive, to build the bonds that hold the tribe together. And they can't do that in little isolated boxes. Children are even more so, because not only are they interacting with people of their own age, they're interacting with peers, or not peers, but people who are older and assert a certain amount of authority over them. And it's a very critical time. And I think that even a couple of weeks of normalcy would help children understand that the way school is right now is hopefully not going to be the way it is for the rest of their lives. That they're going to be able to go back to school. They're going to be able to associate with their friends, do their little plays, and play t-ball and maybe field hockey or whatever sport that happens to they delight in groups, and just be kids. Right now, if you've got them broken up, like if you live we're fortunate living out here in the country because there's a lot of socializing that goes on just because of the nature of the beast out here. Our kids are older. They've got some friends in town they hang around with. They're doing the socializing thing anyway. But if you live in town and you live in a condo and you've got two kids and you're told that they have to homeschool, and a lot of people working from home before, I've made this point before, but imagine the stress that is in the family. It would almost be like a 2-week holiday for the parents to be able to watch little Johnny and Susie trundle off to the bus or walk to school or whatever, however they get there. And the parents know that for a few hours at least, they can have an adult conversation without little ears worrying about, the phrases they choose or the words they use to express themselves to one another, because you never know who's listening just around the corner. So I think there's a lot of value in that. And I would say for the 2 weeks that it's going to be, it'd be worth it.
Well, what I think comes to my mind, Nick, is the simple question, what the hell did we do before we had government schools?
Well, we didn't have kids broken up into tiny little capsules that never got a chance to mix with each other. As a matter of fact, socialization was at a higher degree because if you wanted to entertain yourself, you had to go down the road and play with the other farmers' kids.
Okay. So
that's what we did.
When did our schools become the principal place for socialization for the children? And I mean, and I, just by dint of circumstance, I understand that that's what's happened. But when did that become an articulated responsibility, a mandate of our education system? Is that, to teach children how to socialize with one another?
Well, I think from my perspective, it took place gradually over a number of decades as the economy transferred from an agrarian one to an urban one. When centers of manufacturing began to draw people away from the farm and into the cities, they started living in houses and communities, and it was rather than the little red schoolhouse that looked after the kids of 15 or 20 farmers and their wives who happened to have 8 or 10 kids apiece and could keep a school going, to a scenario where 2 or 3 kids was the norm, and they were scattered over a much wider geographic area, but it wasn't, when somebody said go play in the traffic, there was traffic to play in. So I think that's kind of the way things shifted over. And over time, you had this incrementalism creep in where teachers began to take on more of an authoritarian role over children. And for a while, that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Marin just posted in the chat room, the Industrial Revolution is what I'm describing. When that took place is when this all began. And it's taken us from then until now to get to where we are. So you have kids who now wouldn't know, a horse from a mule or a horse from a cow, but know how to recycle a can. The priorities in education have shifted as the demographics have shifted away from an agrarian lifestyle to an urban one. And that's allowed parents who now need to have both of them working. So you tie this to the tax rate too. If it didn't require two people working to raise a family, then one of the parents could stay home and educate children or be much more involved in their education than is currently the case. Right now, it's really easy just to send them off to school and let somebody else look after it. And that is a travesty.
Right. And the comparison that you were looking for there, Nick, was can you tell the difference between a mule and a donkey?
No, there is no difference. Actually, there is. Let me take that back.
Yeah, there is a difference.
Yes, there is. A mule is a cross between a horse and a donkey.
And
much larger.
And mules are?
Small.
No, sorry. Donkeys are?
Small.
Sterile.
No, mules are sterile.
Okay, so the mule is the cross.
Yes, the mule's a cross and it is sterile. They've been used as pack animals and plow animals for generations, but they are very, very sensitive. You don't just grab a mule and drag him by the nose out into the field. You better treat him right, or he's not going to go with you.
Oh, so that's why my father used to call me a mule head.
That's right. It's amazing what you learn. Oh, Kate, my daughter, who is into training horses, says if you want to learn to be a good horseman, learn to be a good mule skinner, and you won't have any trouble with horses.
A mule skinner.
Yep.
Okay.
Marin said, my mule friends just sat up straight. Oh, I love the chat room. Yeah, it's there's a lot too. I think that getting back to education, I really think that the Industrial Revolution played a huge role, and so did the ever-increasing tax rates. Because if it didn't take, an income of $100,000 a year to live on 50, because they take half of it on in taxes in one form or another, then mom or dad, because I don't care which one it is, could stay home and make sure that either they were very attentive to what their schools were teaching or took on the burden of teaching their own kids through homeschooling.
Right.
You'd have a much better educated population that wouldn't fall nearly so easily for a lot of the gullibility that's out there. Everything from the climate scam to a lot of the junk around COVID to, the different things that have come down the pike in the last while. They wouldn't be so susceptible to that because common sense would overrule a lot of the nonsense they hear out on the street.
Well, not just common sense, but more importantly, fundamentals in education.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
A basic, first of all, you have to be able to read, write, and do basic arithmetic. So that's the minimum. When my grandchildren were younger, I would tell them when they were first starting to read, and some of them struggled with it. I said, when you learn how to read, the world is totally open to you. You can be educated, you can self-educate. Everything is open to you if you can read. So reading is the single most important skill that you can teach your children. And it's followed shortly by being able to do basic arithmetic. So reading and basic arithmetic. And then from there, everybody should have a basic understanding of scientific principles. And not just scientific principles, but some scientific theory, so that, there are things that, you'll be able to tell when so-called experts are not necessarily pulling the wool over your eyes, but, people today just get, the minute you talk about following the science, you have to follow the science. Well, of course you have to